Hello viewers, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the telecast of Potter's House Christian Mission, Ibadan, Nigeria. It promises to be a time of blessing, a time of revelation in the presence of God as we bring you today's episode of What Saith the Scriptures. Let's turn our Bibles to the book of 1 Samuel, chapter number 9. 1 Samuel, chapter number 9. I am going to read verses 1 to 11 or to 10. And then I will pause there, discuss a little, and see if the Lord will still want us to push that beyond where we are. I'm reading from the Old King James Version. Now, there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechorath, the son of Apher, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. And the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. And Kish said to Saul his son, "Take now one of the servants with thee, and arise, go seek the asses." And they passed through Mount Ephraim, and passed through the land of Shalisha, but they found them not. Then they passed through the land of Shalim, and there they were not. And they passed through the land of Benjamites, but they found them not. And when they were come to the land of Zoph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, "Come, and let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses, and take thought for us." And he said unto him, "Behold, now there is in this city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All that he saith cometh surely to pass. Now let us go thither. Peradventure he can show us our way that we should go." Then said Saul to his servant, "But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels, and there is not a present to bring to the man of God. What have we?" And the servant answered Saul again and said, "Behold, I have here at hand the fourth part of a shekel of silver. That will I give to the man of God to tell us our way." Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spake, "Come, let us go to the seer." For that is now called a prophet, was before time called a seer. Then Saul said to his servant, "Well said, come, let us go." So they went unto the city, where the man of God was. I'd like to pause here. May the Lord bless this word in our hearts in the name of Jesus. I have tried to go through the Bible study in our pamphlet, and I think the Lord has given us space to take a good study, a good look at Saul, the son of Kish, which actually is the focus of this retreat. I will simply outline or possibly underline some few issues or emphasize some of the issues raised in the pamphlet. Yet, I trust the Holy Spirit also to bring us further lights and personal instructions for our lives, especially now that the year is just starting, and many of us too, majority, maybe about 90% of those of us who are here, if not more, are just starters, as it were. We're just starting our lives. We still have bulk of our lives ahead of us. There are about 4 or 5 issues which I will trust the Lord to help us to look at in this passage. And I will desire that you will look at them personally. Each time I read the Bible, I read it personally. 2 things I always tell myself: this is for a lesson, and number 2, this is an instruction. I don't joke with those 2 things, because for me, the Bible is a personal letter that God has written to me, and I want to take it that way too as we look at this book together. Now, that Bible started with a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, and the Bible traced his genealogy back to Benjamin. He's the son of Abiel, son of Zerah, son of Bechorath, son of Apia, a Benjamite and a mighty man of power. In most cases, the Bible will introduce a man as a mighty man of valor, not a mighty man of power. But for Kish, the Bible introduced him almost strangely, calling him a mighty man of power. So, Saul from this background, Kish from this background, may not necessarily be a fighter, but he had a lot of wealth. He was a wealthy man, and that the Bible recognized as something that a man that could give a man might. I want to quietly bring that to your notice. As you grow in age, as you grow in education, as you grow skills, potentials that God has given to you, I have found people who are very gifted and yet very small in their gifting. In other words, their gift has never added strength to them. I've met men who are seriously graced, and yet they are not mighty men of grace. I have met men. So when you hear Paul asking, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus, you wonder why a man could be in grace, could have grace, and yet weak. So a man could be a man of power, and yet he may not have might through the power at his disposal. You may have something and you don't know how to use it. You may have something and you don't know how to harness it. You may have something that could make you great in life, and you might altogether ignore it or treat it as if it is nothing, and it doesn't add strength to you. It doesn't make you influential, and all of that. So it is important for me, even though I'm not studying Kish, but of course Kish became important because it was from him this Saul that we are talking about came. And who Kish was has a lot to do with who Saul will also be or become. And so I want to say to you that you might start to notice certain things in your life that are not common somewhere else. I wish you will ask God for wisdom for how to use it so that you become mighty in it. I pray that you will understand that if you have grace to do something that others cannot do, you may have it and you may never become anything noticeable, anything that anybody could take note of, even though you have it. And yet there are people, if they should have 10% of what you have, they become so mighty. People get to know that they possess something that others do not possess. So let me just leave that. Now, as the Bible describes the father of Saul, the Bible also mentioned that he had a son. Of course, I was curious in my heart. I have not searched to find out whether Kish had only one child. But I am thinking that he may have other children apart from Saul. I read about Ahab. He was a king in Israel, very bad king, and he had a wife, very bad woman, but very good wife. The name of his wife was Jezebel. I'm sure many of you don't like Jezebel, but Jezebel was a very great wife, even though a bad woman. You hardly could find any wife that can beat Jezebel when it comes to being a help unto one's husband. Jezebel was a perfect example of what it means to be a correct wife, even though she was a very bad woman and she had very bad influence on her husband. Now, I saw that Ahab had about 70 or 80 sons, and yet the only person that the Bible called the wife of Ahab was Jezebel. And I know it is not possible for Jezebel to give birth to 80 children. Is it possible? It's not. It's not possible. It's not possible. So, for the Bible to have called Jezebel the wife of Ahab, it means there were other women attached to Ahab, but there was only one who was qualified to be called a wife. I remember that when God was to choose another person to replace this same Saul that we are looking at, God asked Samuel to go to the house of Jesse and there anoint one person as a king instead of Saul. I remember that Jesse brought out his 7 sons and lined them up before Samuel. And one after the other, Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen this. The Lord has not chosen this. Until the last one came, the Lord has not chosen this. And the question that Samuel asked Jesse was, are these all thy sons? By that statement, it means all the 7 children that Jesse lined up before Samuel, none was qualified to be a son until the last one, the smallest of them all, who was David. So I am also thinking in my heart that it may not be that Saul was the only child that Kish had, but that must be the only one that possessed the qualities of being called a son. And so I want to say to you that it is very correct for you to strive to be recognized as a child of God, even if you will be the only person. I think it is good for people to say there is no child of God anywhere. Everybody is, look, they are all children of the devil. It's good for people to say that. But it is good for you to choose to be the only one out of many people who will not be qualified to be called a child of God. In your school, I feel you will just come to that point where even when they say nobody is a child of God, but they will bring an exception to your case. I say, except Kemi, except Tolani, except Shade. We know others, but this one is a different breed entirely. That's the kind of thing I am seeing in this place. That there could be many other children that Kish gave birth to, but there was one the Bible recognized as a son. He had a son. I am not thinking that was the only son, but the Bible said that was the only one he had. Other ones were not his. Once a son is not linked to his father, what do you call such a son? It's a bastard. And for me, a bastard means a star that is bad. A bad star. It's a star, but it's a very bad one. Once a child cannot be linked or cannot be claimed by his father, then that child is a bastard, an illegitimate child. So when the Bible said he had a son, it is a great thing that Kish was altogether not regarded as a barren man. I remember a story in the book of Numbers, around chapter 17. There was an argument about the authenticity of the ministry of Aaron and Moses. Some people actually led very strong insurrection against them. And the Lord himself decided to show to them who belonged to him. And he asked that each family should present a rod. And dry dead rods were laid before the Lord. And only one of the 12 dead rods budded, blossomed, and fruited in one night. And the Lord demanded that those that did not resurrect should be taken away, possibly used for firewood. Only the one that budded was retained in his presence. That was God's choice. I feel I should tell you that up until today, there is yet a very great strive for God to have those he could call his. There are many songs, but what the first thing I want to emphasize here is the one that God has as his. I remember that when he got to Bethphage and he wanted to ride upon an ass, the Bible says he sent 2 of his own disciples. And I wonder in my heart that it means there are disciples, but Jesus knew among the disciples those that belong to him. And I feel I should tell you that it is not just enough to be a child of God. It is simply desirable that God himself will acknowledge and accept you as his. Anything less than that is quite dangerous for you. Anything below the fact that God could claim you to be his is very, very dangerous. And I would request that you will check your heart and check your life if actually you can be linked with the Lord. Is there anything about you that is also found in God? Yorùbá ní ọmọ àjànàkú kì í yàrá, ọmọ tẹ́yà bá bí ẹ̀yà ló máa ń jọ. Àjànàkú is elephant. If you find that difficult for you, that you will never find an elephant, a baby elephant, being a dwarf. It's not possible. When an elephant whelps, you will know that this is a baby elephant. It doesn't look small. It doesn't look like a puppy. No. A day-old elephant will be almost as big as a cow. Just a day old. And that is what it is. And I feel that for us, we must check if God has a son in you, if God has a daughter in you. I wish I could push that. I wish I could spend little time to discuss it, even though I will still refer to it in the course of this discussion. But it is needless. If God looks at a congregation and he could see seas of head, and the one that belong to him are very few, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you are in the choir and you are not his own son. One of the stories that disturbs me in the Bible so much is the story of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham. That man was a very active, very faithful, very righteous servant of Abraham. In fact, Abraham depended upon that man virtually for everything. It was the second leg of Abraham. There was virtually nothing Abraham would do without this man. In fact, everything that Abraham had was in the hand of this man. He was such a very faithful servant. By my calculations, he served Abraham for nothing less than 65 years. Because I remember that Abraham was 75 when Abraham met God. And it took him 25 years before he gave birth to the promised child. And by the time that promised child was getting married, he was 60. He was 40. And if I add 25 years of waiting plus 40 years, that makes it 65 years. That Eliezer served Abraham meritoriously. But as early as chapter 15 of the book of Genesis, Abraham had started to raise questions about Eliezer, calling this Eliezer of Damascus. Abraham was having sleepless night. And you ask why? Because this Eliezer of Damascus is going to become the heir that will inherit his vast estate. Abraham was disturbed. I felt in my heart, what is wrong with Eliezer? Is it that Eliezer was a stubborn boy? No. Is it that Eliezer was unrighteous? Not at all. Everything that you look for in a child, sometimes which you cannot even get in your own child, was in Eliezer. And yet, Abraham was not comfortable with him. And God told him that he that will inherit him will come out of the loins of Abraham. I was worried at that. Because at the age of 40, which means 65 years of meritorious service unto Abraham, in a single day, Abraham took everything that he had kept in the hand of this man for those number of years and gave it to his son. Eliezer had been keeping those things before Isaac was born. So I felt that why will you take everything without leaving anything for Eliezer? I tried to check whether Eliezer committed an offense. No. It was Eliezer who got a wife, and a correct one for Isaac. He did everything well. Even when they gave him food, when he had not delivered the message, he refused to eat. Even though he came with other servants who respected him, he never introduced himself as the groom that was going to marry that woman. And all of this made me to think that, can Abraham have a better son than Eliezer? But then, just like that, Abraham took everything that was in the hand of Eliezer and gave it to his son. I checked what was the offense of Eliezer. The only offense he committed was that he was not a son. That was the only offense. He understood the language of Abraham. In fact, because he was born in the house of Abraham, he was named after Abraham. Many of us, our names start with Olu. My own name also starts with Olu. Olusegun, Olufumelayo, Oluwaseun. Now, bearing a name with God does not actually make you God's son. God will allow you to serve and may not even bother about it. But you'll be shocked that when reward is going to be given, he will give it only to his children. God knows who to give reward to. He will not give it to charlatans. He will not give it to impostors. He will not give it to hypocrites. He will simply give his inheritance unto children. You can be so close to God and yet so close to death. You can be so close to the pulpit and yet so close to the pits into which you may fall.
This program was brought to you by Potter's House Christian Mission, Bedford, Alata Village, off Ijebu-Ode, Ibadan Road, Adebayo Idiayunre, Ibadan, Nigeria. We believe that the Lord has richly blessed and challenged your heart by today's telecast. For further inquiries, prayers, and counseling, please contact us on and God bless you.